enjoy and please welcome this roundtable.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So I'll kick it off. My name is Melissa Jerkwois. It is a tough one. I'm actually over here in the United States. It's quite early my time now, 6:30 a.m. So bright and early. I'm about halfway through my first cup of coffee. So we'll see how I do. I'm the co-founder of an initiative called Diversify Thinking, where we focus on raising the level of action to meet the level of conversation around diversity and now equity and inclusion, because it wasn't confusing enough before. So I'm also the CXO for a small tech startup here in the States called Adaptation, where we focus around user experience, specifically on Salesforce. So I want to have our roundtable participants introduce themselves, and then I want to give you guys some context, and then we'll dive into just like a really hopefully meaty conversation, and then we'll get questions too from the audience as we go. So Aurora, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, hi everyone. Hi, I'm an Android developer, and I've been working at Synesthesia since January, and this is my first job. So my experience is very short in terms of team, because I've changed only 2 teams for the moment, but I've already seen many positive and some negative aspects, and we will discuss later about it. Thank you.
Awesome. Who wants to go next? Kamal?
Oh, yeah, thanks, Melissa. Hi, this is Kamal, and I'm a Google developer expert in Flutter and Dart, and I'm a YouTuber. Happy to say that I was the first woman YouTuber in Flutter, so I kind of broke that stereotype, and I'm like quite happy to do that. And I'm also a mentor at Mentor Cruise, and I work on building communities and a developer advocate in India, for one of the startups here. I'm glad to be a part of this roundtable conference.
Awesome. Thank you. Ariana?
Hi, I'm Ariana, and I'm really happy to be joining this roundtable. I'm an Android developer, and I work for Telepass Digital, and I've been coding since 2016, and I'm really grateful again to be here.
I can go next. Hi everyone. My name is Divya. I am a mobile app developer. I've been developing apps for about 8 years now. And I have a mixed experience of working with big organizations and startups, both in India and United States. Very happy to be here and excited to be part of this conversation, which I feel is very important for today. So, yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. I agree. It is very important. And I actually have come from about 2 decades of corporate. So I understand working like at large companies versus startups. It's very different. I'll focus today a little bit on startups when I just give you some context. But what I always say when I give this talk or other talks around diversity and inclusion is whatever I say, even if the statistics or the data is focused around a particular dimension of diversity or a particular context, please make it work for you. Like take whatever it is and apply it to your own context. I promise you it's related, right? Like there's something relative for you to take away. These problems are, they transcend boundaries of team size or organization size, or even dimensions. So definitely like don't shut off and be like, I'm not listening to this roundtable. It's about startups and I work at IBM. No, you should still listen. I promise you have these problems. And I promise you that you can help be part of the solution. So I'll share my screen. Let's see if this works and give you guys a little bit of context, and then we can dive right in. So I already shared who I was and what I do. I want to give a little context of like what we at Diversify Thinking say our definition of diversity is, because I heard a great quote recently at a workshop where they said that diversity is what you see without a conversation. And I just love that because it is so incredibly true. Like we talk about all the different dimensions of diversity. The de facto dimensions that everyone jumps to, of course, are gender, like we're all women here today, and race, which we are all pretty diverse in race. So I'm really excited about that for this conversation. But those are the 2, and there's lots of others. And it's not just gender and race. And even those have gotten a little bit complex, right, in the last couple of years. So I think, what I like to do is ground ourselves in what's the value of diversity? It's not just about the color of our skin or, who we identify as. It's really about our thoughts, our perspectives, the unique things we bring to the table as individuals. So I love this quote from Malcolm Forbes, and we really carry this definition through sort of our mantra and what we do, and that diversity really is the art of thinking independently together. And those two things don't have to be mutually exclusive or opposing thoughts. We can have our independent thoughts and come together, and something amazing can happen. I'm a true believer that that's actually where the magic happens. Innovation is born out of conflict and people disagreeing and people bringing different opinions to the table. So I like to start this with this sort of framework, and just always remember that diversity is really complex. We just made it even more complex because we added E to the D and the I. But at the end of the day, it's about a lot of people with different backgrounds, perspectives, yes, race, gender, all of those things, religious preferences, neurodiversity, huge thing with neurodiversity that people have yet to really embrace, how people's brains actually work differently. I have two nieces that are autistic, but similar to that quote, if you met them on the street, you would think they were average teenage girls until you started to talk to them and really engaged with them. And then you'd realize they're actually quite different and unique and brilliant, really, right? So, I mean, there's a lot to be unpacked with diversity, and we don't have enough time today. So I want to just ground us in this foundational quote, because I think it helps us really kind of rationalize the complexity of what really is diversity, right? And the reason why I think it's overwhelming, and we'll talk more about that today, and why people have a hard time figuring out where to start, if to start, and what to do. So that's, again, just a foundational quote. Some other interesting facts, again, these are really focused around gender and race, and also in the context of startups. There's lots of studies that have been done. And so I love to share these metrics, because we often think of our ability to influence and, increase awareness and change the ratio and all of those great taglines for diversity and inclusion are altruistic, right? It's because we're just doing the right thing for society. Well, I'm here to tell you it's also the right thing for business. There's a lot of monetary benefits that happen on the other side of being more diverse and inclusive. So startups with diverse leadership teams. So there's a couple quotes, a couple of statistics. One is a diverse leadership team where at least one of the founders is female, 63% better valuations as a company. What does that mean? That company is worth more to investors because there's at least one female founder. You add to that an ethnic founder, like someone who's ethnically diverse, it's 65% more valuable. Okay, so I'm talking dollar signs. It's not just about being a good human here. Like, there's money involved with these things. So, my reason to share these statistics, which are not statistics that we came up with at Diversified Thinking, but we are happy to share and evangelize them, is so that you understand there's true benefits to the business and to the team. And that's why it is crucial for people to take into awareness, not just because we're good people, although that's definitely a huge part of it, right? Like, we want to be inclusive for all those reasons as well. What about attracting talent? 2/3 of job seekers today, 2/3, right? That's quite a bit. They listed diversity and inclusion as their number one reason to go or not go to a company. So, I talked about the diversity in your leadership. Guess what? That's what you look like to the rest of the world. I'm representing organizations I work with, talking to you today at this conference, as you all are. We are the faces of our company out there in the public. So if people like to gravitate, because humans are interesting creatures, we gravitate to who we look like. It's the reason why diversity is so tough, because we build networks around us that make us feel safe. And those people that make us feel safe are people that look like us. I generally reject the mindset, and I think we could talk about this too, like-minded. And the reason why I do that is much because of the quote that I just gave you on diversity from Malcolm Forbes. Like-minded to me is kind of boring. It means that we all agree with each other. We sit around the table and nod. And isn't it just so nice? It's great. We all feel really good about that, but nothing really awesome happens from that, right? Except for that we feel good. Where the really awesome stuff happens is when we disagree. And when we don't think alike. And so we often say great minds don't think alike, right? Because that's where people come together and awesome stuff happens. But it's really important to people that are looking for jobs. So we'll talk, hopefully today you guys will have interesting stories about recruiting and different things that you've witnessed as well. So 2/3 of people right now are looking at this. They go on the website and they see, who's the leadership team? Oh, it's all white men in their 50s. I don't know if I'm going to work there, right? Like, this is what happens. And that's most of the job. at least for us in the US, that's most of the companies. So we need to change that, right? So what's the power of inclusion? So we talked about like diversity in the team, attracting talent, maybe even attracting customers, right? Because people relate to you. So it has an impact on your business too. What if I told you that almost 2 times, 1.7 times more likely a company is, if they get inclusion right, they are 1.7 times more likely to be seen as a market leader in whatever industry they're in. That's pretty awesome. So why is that? Like, hopefully it's starting to come together that the reason why that is a true statistic is because if you really are intentional about inclusion and making sure everyone feels like they belong and they can invite their opinion and bring it to the table, you get innovation. So you're going to be seen as an innovative leader in your market, right? All of these things sort of chain together to have this amazing impact on the business. So the stuff matters. These metrics are real. I didn't make them up. And I believe that they're only going to get greater. And we'll see that as we all become more intentional and have more conversations like this. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing so I can see everyone's faces, much more clearly. And I'd love to jump in and I guess whoever wants to start, I'd love to have a conversation around, and I can start actually to kick it off around recruiting, like attracting talent and attracting diverse talent. So I have anecdotally at our startup and other companies actually too, but like I'll focus on our startup, had a challenge attracting diverse talent when I've posted roles for our teams. We found through sort of experimental, like startups typically do, ways of identifying why that was, that it led to our job descriptions, the titles that we used, the words that we used. So if we had things like technical and analyst in a title, no women would apply. And I was like, wow, that's amazing and scary. So like that was a big deal. We also used a tool called, I don't know, I'm interested to hear if you have ever used any decoders in your time, like against like text.io, or we used one that's a gender decoder to really look at our language, because the English language, at least from our perspective here in the US, is pretty there. It trends towards masculinity. So we were also seeing that we were women writing job descriptions, but when we screened it with using a gender decoder, it was a very like stereotypical masculine language, which I was like, wait, we're not men. So like really surprising and shocking kind of revelations around that. And I'm proud to say that once we did that and sort of shortened our job descriptions, so we didn't have the proverbial like 10 requirements and we as women have to match 10 of 10 and one that we made up in our heads before we actually apply. We condensed those and decoded some things. We saw more women, like upwards of like 11% more women, specifically, like I'm focusing on that dimension of diversity, starting to apply. So there was definitely like an actual results on the other side of that. So I'm curious who wants to share, like if they have experience in this, maybe from your own experience or things that you've seen or been participant in.
I would like to take that on because I think you bring up a very interesting point. I have seen throughout the last like 4 years, because I have been on the side where I've interviewed more people, and based on the job description in general, if there is a lot of technical requirements, I have seen a lot of women hesitant to apply just because they like to evaluate themselves more based on if I'm even suitable for this job based on the job description, and then only I'll apply. Whereas for men, I think it's easier to just apply and go for it without actually evaluating whether you even match the skills which are listed. So I feel that it's something that we very unconsciously put out there when we as recruiters are writing the job description. But I believe that it's, again, I was not aware of the tool, but I feel like it's very important to actually analyze your job descriptions from a very neutral perspective and see if you don't see enough women or even like diverse range of people applying for jobs, then I think there is a very basic need to actually evaluate what you're putting, like what job description you're putting out there, because that will lead to a certain type of people applying more versus people actually evaluating whether you're even suitable for the job.
Yeah, 100%. They actually, there are studies they've done actually that men will look at the same exact job description as a woman. And if they can like meet 1 out of the 10 requirements, they're like, oh yeah, I got this. And they'll apply, right? Whereas we just like completely overanalyze, pick it apart. And again, we make up things. We're like, well, I know it says that. And yes, I've done that, but not really in that way. And I don't feel like I'm confident enough to say that I actually did that. Like we kind of do this mental gymnastics around it. But does anyone else have experience or thoughts around that? Or maybe personal experience not applying? Because yes, I have.
Yes, definitely. I agree to Divya's point because being in a role with more than like 10 plus years of experience, when you recruit people, the first preconceived notion that you have is like, there is no one job where you can satisfy all the requirements. That is the first thing that we'll always have to think about it. It's the capability that you would be able to pick up these skills on the go. So that is the kind of notion that you have to develop. But guys or men or others who really don't look at these aspects, they're good at 1-2 skills, they're ready to apply for a job. They take it, yes, I can handle it. So that mentality or that thing has to be analyzed and kind of broken down and give it a try and see what works. After having a good amount of discussion, then you would be in a better position to understand what the real role is looking for. Even though the job description says a lot of fancy tech stacks in it. So I think it's more important to have discussion and understand it more.
Yeah, absolutely. Aurora, I'm curious, as this is your first role, did you have some of these angst when you were looking for jobs from your perspective? Were you looking at things and going, that's too much, I can't do that, I've never done that, especially just being new to the job world?
Well, I don't know. I did my thesis here in synesthesia, so I immediately applied for this job, and I already knew them. Yeah. So my company is extremely smart under this point of view. But before I had an interview with another company where they asked me just technical skill. And I believe this is a problem when you do an interview, because you should hire the best candidate without bias, by screening them for the right skill abilities, not just for the past experience or the technical skills. Mm-hmm. But you should test them on their cognitive abilities, skills, also language abilities, and not just by technical. So
yeah, no, I totally agree. Yeah, I totally agree. In fact, I have a funny story. I'm going to date myself. It was a long time ago when I was really early in my career and I was an engineer and I was broaching into like the new job market, and I was interviewed. And so I had worked in database design and databases, like different technologies, right? Like Paradox, like all these things that probably don't even exist anymore. The person that was interviewing me only knew Microsoft Access. That's all they knew. It was like the one thing I had written, like transact SQL queries and Postgres, and like worked with UIs like Paradox and did all this database manipulation, but I hadn't worked in Microsoft Access. Okay. Pretty sure I could apply those skills, right? I think they were applicable to Access and they didn't give me the job because I didn't have Access experience. And I was like, oh, okay. Like I could design a database in my sleep, but that's fine. So I totally, like, you just made me remember that anecdote quite promptly, just because you said that. I was like, it's silly, right? It doesn't make sense. It's I always say when I'm hiring, like 85% of what I'm looking for is attitude and willingness to learn. And then yes, your applicable experience could be something that you have to be open-minded to it. I talk to people that are trying to get into tech, which is really hard, right? Like people are like, talk about imposter syndrome for people that don't have tech experience, don't have a tech degree, and they're trying to migrate, and we're not creating pathways for them, right? And I'm talking to them, and similarly, they're like, but I don't have, I'm like, okay, let's break it down. Like, what are the transcending skills, like things that transfer into that are really important? Like, have you ever worked on a team? Do you know how to like resolve conflict? Do you know how to do research? Give me an example of when you've done research. Like these things, like they're all applicable. I can train you on the tech. And tech is just, it's only getting easier. Like I'm less worried about whether you can do that part, right? I'm like with low code, you don't even need to know how to code anymore. So like that part, it's just, you know, we need to focus more, to your point, Aurora, around what are the skills that are really important, that are hard to learn, that you're coming to me with, and what are the things that I could just teach, right? And I think, you know, who you are as a person and your ability to learn and demonstrating that you've learned and picked up skills fast is super important to me when I'm looking. Ariana, any thoughts on this topic?
Yeah, well, I started kind of the same for Aurora, because I started working on this small company when right up before finishing, before graduating in university. And I actually never developed any Android code. But I started with the stage, and I remember that they asked me, what do you want to do? Do you want to start with Android? Do you want to start with iOS or web? And I said, okay, let's try with Android. It fascinates me. And it was really, I'm really grateful because it was an amazing experience. And they gave me the opportunity to learn there. So it was really great. And I think that I can relate, but I never have many interviewed, because after that the company grew, and then it was bought by Telepass. So
Yeah.
it's the same company. But I can relate to the thought that if I read an interview and I find something that I think I can do, I'm like, okay, that maybe it's not my job. Maybe I need to find something else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. I think I love this part of the conversation because it really focuses around creating pathways for people, like having that open mind around what can we do to help people get into tech who aren't in tech, move into a different role in tech that are already in tech. And like, how do we look at skills to say, we can teach that can be learned. So that brings me to like the E in the whole DE and I, because I think that, you know, it was D and I for forever. And now all of a sudden the E's shown up. And what does it actually mean? So the way that we talk about it, and I'm interested to see what your thoughts are, is really around making sure not only that you have support for everyone, which is part of just being inclusive, right? And that everyone, their unique needs feels supported and feels like they belong, but also that they have the same opportunities, right? That you're providing them the ability to have those pathways as individuals. Like, how are you supporting them? But also, is there equity in the opportunity that they have? So I have lots of examples where that hasn't been the case in my career history. I'm curious if anyone, Kamal, maybe you have some experience in like seeing either for yourself or for others where there wasn't equity and opportunity. Like maybe there was a promotion on the table, but not everyone was equally considered for said promotion.
Definitely, there were situations like that, but I would like to highlight one point where a person with a consistency experience in a tech or in a non-tech field, and a person with a gap in a career, a woman who's taken a gap, is being considered different. Yeah, whether it's a woman or a man for personal reasons, whether the man started with a startup, he was building up his own business and coming back, they look at these criteria. So I really don't understand when both are giving awesome results on the platter, building up products, how does this gap or these things really matter? So I keep wondering, and this also kind of impacted me personally as well. And yeah, that is something which we'll have to address, and it has to be taken up in a lot of forms, that this is not one of the factors to be judged on or opinionated. Yeah. I think most of you must have experienced and would agree to this.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think, and you're spot on, right? It's when it's a man that's had a break, there's almost like, oh, he must have been like squirreled away, like thinking some amazing things. And he just had to pause, right? Because he was about to come out of the cave with this amazing,
Indeed.
company or something. But with us, it's like, oh, well, now you're stale. You haven't been active for, the time it took you to bring a life into the world and start to raise that, that child, right? For example, I think that we definitely take the brunt of that. Does anyone else have any sort of experience or insight around that? I think that's a great point.
I think the other thing, so me personally, I have in both my last two companies, the startups that I've worked for, I have been the only female developer in a team of in the team of Android developers. And I wouldn't say that I felt that I was the only female developer, but I definitely had to, for the end of the year reviews, I feel like I had to work and prove, work extra hard to prove myself. In the end, it did result in good expected results, but at the same time, I still feel like I had to put in an extra, a lot extra effort compared to my male counterparts, in order just to prove that I do deserve, let's say, a promotion, or even just some sort of validation at the end of the year. And I still am wondering why. I'm still not 100% sure why that is, which tells me that the whole perspective is still different. To just to bring up what Kamal also said, right? It's just the perspective which is still different as to how a woman is perceived at in a job versus how a man is perceived. And I know this is not a conversation only about men versus women, because there is the other other aspects to it. But unfortunately, we are still in today's world, there is a difference in that perspective without any solid reason.
Yeah, absolutely right. It's just societal bias, right? Which is real, and we feel it all the time. And I think we also impose it on ourselves. Like you said, we work 10 times as hard because we're always trying to prove ourselves.
Yes.
Aurora, Ariana, are you guys the sole females on your dev teams? What's your context look like?
I am the only female, but I'd like to say that it's funny that there is no man in this conversation right now.
It's true, right? It's true.
Yeah.
I guess we're not being very inclusive.
Why? Yes, we are. Now, by the way, my first team actually was composed by 2 men and two women, so we were very, very balanced, and we also have different characters and experiences. So I worked very, very well during that month because we reached a balance that permitted us to work fast, well, and relaxed. And like I said before, we are 3 or 4 women in the factory team, but my company is smart. There are people with different culture backgrounds who speak different languages, and they are trying to hire more women in the factory. But it is difficult, and I believe it's not company's fault. But maybe the reason of this imbalance could be found in the fact that we women are less tempted and encouraged to do scientific university. So maybe for historical reason, we believe that we are worse than men in scientific subjects. So it became difficult also in the job, like Jane said before. So
yeah, absolutely. Ariana, how about you?
Yeah, I'm actually not the only female on the Android team.
Awesome.
We are 2. And,
2.
That's great. But I worked for a long time being the only female in the whole mobile section. And I didn't felt treated differently from the company, or my team. But I think I felt being female was harder Not that the company made me hard, made the job harder for me or anything. But I felt that I wasn't as the same line as the men. So I needed to do more. I had to be more capable just to prove myself being a woman. And so also in the university, when I started, I think we were around 150 people, and I counted 5 women maybe. So I think what Aurora said is also the fact that women are not, there are not a lot of women in the tech companies, in the tech, in the scientific world. And this is beginning to change, because I saw that it's beginning to, we are beginning to be more present.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a comment from the audience too. I just want to share. I'm not going to try to pronounce this. I think it's Atanas. Shanev, I'm horrible with this. Sorry. Hello, my organization is trying to attract the best talent, but in my honest opinion, we are having a tough time attracting brilliant candidates from all diversity groups. It's almost painful hearing how there is a barrier when considering whether to apply for a job or not. Yeah, we feel that. It is so again, like, I think there's tips and tricks to be able to combat this, right? Like, how do you attract a diverse audience? You have to be intentional, right? You have to be intentional about it. One thing is like decoding job descriptions, making your job descriptions not like 3 pages long, because I'm telling you right now, we all just shared with you, bring this back to your offices. If they're too long, women won't apply. It's not your fault. It's not their fault. It's just the way it is. So make your job descriptions less like, you know, they don't need to be an encyclopedia of requirements. Like, what's really important for you? It's really who that person is, not that they have 15 certifications that most people don't have all at the same time. Like, don't overshoot, because you're going to get just men. I promise. Like, we all just shared it with you. You've heard it here. It's not going to happen. So like, condense your job descriptions, decode them for sensitive language, both culturally as well as gender bias. This stuff matters. Decode your website, because guess what we do when we apply for a job? We look on your website and then recognize what you look like to the rest of the world. Again, like, I'm probably not excited to apply to a company that has a full leadership team of white males in their 50s. Again, nothing wrong with white males in their 50s. I'm married to one. It's fine. But I don't necessarily want to work for a company that has no diversity in their leadership team, because it kind of speaks to me that it's kind of boring. Like, what awesome decisions are they making? Do they even disagree with each other at the table, or they're all just like nodding and it's a group think session, right? So pay attention to that. Like, again, bring all this back to your offices. You may not be the most popular person in the room, but you'll be the most honest, and it's real, right? So there's hope. Don't be discouraged, but be enlightened. There's hope to take this back and make changes that really matter. And some of the things that you guys were just talking about really spurred something that I'm really passionate about, which is like this whole sense of what is inclusion? What does it actually mean? You know, you guys talked about if you were the only woman and how that was harder and things like that. And then Kamal, you made a great point about having a gap in your career history and how that was looked at differently when you were coming to jobs. I'm curious, you know, have you as individuals ever felt that you didn't belong? Because I think what I have, by the way, what I often say is like, inclusion is feeling like you can come to work as your full self without having to strip away any part of your identity, including the fact that you might be a mother because you have children and you took a break from work to have kids. And like, not that you just advertise it, like you're not changing your baby's dirty diaper on your desk. Like, I'm not saying like it's that out there, but it's part of who you are, right? Like, and it's part of what makes you unique and valuable to that organization. And bringing all of you to work actually makes you a more valuable employee. So, you know, when we talk to leaders, it's often they're like, well, oh no, we're very inclusive. I'm like, okay, that's great for you to think that. Have you asked the people that work for you? Well, how would I ask them? Do I just say, do you feel included? I'm like, no. You would say, do you ever have to strip away any part of your identity to come to work? Like, are you hiding something about yourself? So I'm curious, I'm just going to put that out there, let you guys, speak to, and that can be not just gender, right? Your culture, your own like personal background, like any of that.
Yeah, I think I have one personal experience where you have these meetings and discussions, and you have these architect and higher management people, and we are also sitting together. And if there is some kind of idea thrown or something like that, is one person says yes. If it's in the top management, they say yes. Everybody's like, yes, that's the right solution. So we're never given that opportunity to say even if there could be a other alternative solution or to work on it. They would immediately try to say that, no, this will not work. They look at your experience, they look at you're a woman, they look at what kind of job you're doing and who has, even though sometimes they agree, okay, yeah, you know what, their solution looks good. But again, they come back to the same point just to convince us and then bring back to the initial point of whatever the other person or the higher head says it right. So I've kind of faced and I've been kind of slacked on that part and not being considered as a personal experience. It's just not one meeting, there's several meetings that literally happens. And I'm sure everybody must have gone through this.
I have two very like if you hear about from the examples, because I have told these examples to other people, they're like, wow, we don't even realize this. But I have been part of meetings where a certain number of people will like speak a certain language which you're not sure of. So imagine if like 5 people speak the same language but the other 2 don't, and people start speaking in that language. I feel not included just because I don't speak that language. And isn't that the whole idea of diversity, is that you are speaking one common language, still having disagreements and everything, but so I feel like that's such a basic thing, but still like people just like don't consider it, which is what has happened to me personally. And I'm like, wait, it has given me a pause to think that, do I not belong here just because I don't speak the same language? So I mean, that's one thing. And I had one more example based on what Kamal brought up, but I'm blanking out. So I'll give somebody else the opportunity to speak, and while I think of that example. But that language one, it's happened to me a couple of times, and that it's interesting that it's given me a thought, where do I not belong, which is not a good enough reason.
Yeah, totally. That's happened to me too. Our company was bought by a company in France. And so all of a sudden I was working with lots of French people, and I don't speak French. And they would break into French in the middle of a meeting. And I'll tell you, like, there's like no quicker way. I love your example, because there was no quicker way for me to feel isolated and segregated in that room. And also, how about paranoia? All of a sudden I'm like, are they speaking in French because they're talking about me and they don't want me to know what they're saying?
Exactly.
Oh, P.S. they were all men. And now they're laughing in French. So I'm like, are they saying something that's inappropriate in French about women? Like, I mean, like the things that happen in my head during this, right? So, but very, very real. I love that example. It's definitely something that seems so subtle. They're like, to them, it seems natural to talk to each other in French. But, yes. And yet now looking back, hearing your example and reminding myself of my own, it's like, I should have been like, excuse me, I don't speak French. Can you please speak English? Because I know you can, because we were just speaking English a minute ago. So it's not, there isn't a language barrier. Like, we all speak English. So that it's I mean, it's kind of rude too, right? It's basically like whispering, because they might as well be. I can't understand a word they're saying, but.
I did remember my other example. That was I was just having this discussion with one of my friends the other day, and she was telling me she's a consultant in a big firm, and she's inherently been part of meetings where even though she has higher experience than most of the people sitting in the meeting, just because she's a female, she's been expected to take minutes of the meeting, which again, it makes no sense as to why it's inherently like, there's just an expectation that she will be the one taking minutes of the meeting, because I still don't have a reason to explain it, neither did she. But again, I feel like that's another bias, which seems very like very minor, but it's not. I feel like that gives her a pause to think, why am I the one expected to do this, which is, again, I feel like some sort of an isolation in some way.
100%. And that happened just recently, actually. A woman that works for me said, I'm in these meetings and I feel like, we're all virtual, right? We're a distributed team. And she said,
Right.
I feel like it's like, oh, can you take the notes? Can you what? And so and I said, but are you doing it? And she said, yes. And she's super frustrated. And I said, stop. Just stop doing it.
Right.
Say, actually, and I said, make up an excuse. Say, actually, my internet connectivity is not great and I want to focus on this conversation. So can someone else do that right now? Like, I want to make sure, I said I used to show up when we were all in person, right? Like in my old career, I would show up to a meeting and I had 0 things in my hands, no laptop, no notebook, no nothing. And I would sit down at the table and someone would be like, all right, who's going to take notes? I'm like, sorry, all you got is my brain today. Because it would happen to me all the time. And I was like, no. And the minute you pick up a pen or you open up your laptop, they're like, oh, she's got it. They just assume you are. And my favorite times were when I wasn't taking notes, and I maybe admittedly wasn't engaged in the conversation because it was like the 18th time we had the same conversation. And they assumed they're like, hey, Melissa, can you send the notes after? I'm like, no, actually, I didn't take any. So I'm just like, stop doing it. Right. I think and it seems, again, to your point, it seems so like crazy that people expect us, but we also do it. Right. We also are the ones that get up and be like, does anyone need anything? Don't do that. Do not bring them coffee. They can get up and get their own. How about one of them goes and gets everybody coffee and water? Like, why do we do that? But so the societal bias works in both ways. I think as much as we're aggravated by it, we also do it. It's almost like a reflex for us. So we just have to like intentionally stop. Be like, sit on your hands, seal yourself to your seat, and be like, I am not getting any of you coffee. Ariana, Aurora, any thoughts on that? Like the feeling of belonging or feeling like you have to, or if you've seen someone else that's experienced this, like on your team.
As I said before, I started in this company when it was really little. And so I never had the sense of not belonging because I saw it growing. So I was one of the first. And I started, it's been a long time that I've been working here. So most people knows who I am and what I think, what my religion is, and all these kind of things. So not in this way, but I had some moments with some friends of mine that they were talking about working, and they are all working in tech companies. And sometimes I felt like I was excluded because they were talking to each other and not even looking at me. Let me put it like this. Mm-hmm. So it was like, okay, they're not considering me because I'm a woman, and they think I'm not up to them. That was not a really good situation.
Yeah. Yeah, that's my advice there is interrupt them and say something brilliant. And they'll both be like, oh my gosh, she does know this stuff. And just shock them, right? I think that's advice. So next time you can do that. Show them, be like, yeah, no, I know stuff too. I think one of the things that one of you mentioned, it might have been you, Kamal, around people sharing things and opinions not being heard, like that you don't truly, everyone doesn't truly have a voice around the table. And they'll kind of talk around until they get back to something to like the opposite of what you suggested. I've had different experiences where I've put things out there in the conversation, not afraid to, invite challenge and put out my opinion. It's been like glazed over, ignored. And then a man in the room said that literally the exact same, even used my words, and it was embraced and celebrated.
That was really bad.
more than once that's happened to me. Sort of the flip side of that, it was like, yes, it was ignored and glazed over, but the end point where everyone ended up like being like, oh, that's brilliant, that's a great idea, was actually the idea that I brought up, but it wasn't accepted until it came out of the mouth of a man. So unfortunately, I can say that that's happened quite a bit. Again, we're really focused on the gender diversity dimension during this conversation, but it makes sense, right? Because that's the identity that we all represent. But so I definitely have a lot of experience with that. I think if you've ever heard the term mansplaining, that's really what we call that here in the States, like mansplaining. So you say something and no one understands it until a man says the exact same thing that you just said. So that is real, unfortunately. But again, I think back to the point that we were talking about before, we have to speak up after and be like, yes, that was brilliant when I just said it like 5 minutes ago, right? And like call people out instead of being like burned by it and kind of sitting over here like wallowing in it. We have to speak up. And so that's something that I've started to do pretty late in my career, but it was not something I did early. It was something that like really isolated me, I think, to your point, like just made you feel like on the outside, like, did I not say it in a way that they understood it? Like, was it me? What could I have done differently, when in fact it was nothing you did? It was definitely a factor of the environment.
Yeah, I think, Melissa, you brought up this point saying that you need to speak out, but in reality, actually, when you do that, you've been tagged as rude.
Or abrasive. Abrasive was a term that I was called once.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, you're rude. You don't really fit here. You're not a similar like-minded people. Nod your head for everything. So these are the kind of tags being given to people who try to express what they feel. So that for that reason, people really back off. They say, oh, you know what? If all the frog says yes, I'm also going to say yes. Just nod my head. So that's the kind of culture that has kind of been adopted, appreciated. So I'm sure there are a lot of people in the audience who are watching this show or listening to this. They might want to really know, how do we really not tackle, how do we go with this kind of situations?
Yeah.
What your advice would be like, or anybody else like?
Yeah. Does anyone have thoughts on that? I don't want to talk the whole time.
I would want to put a little bit of a positive spin on that. Is I completely agree with you. If women, especially when they speak up, they are definitely tagged as abrasive, or, a little bit like, even there is a hint of like, you're being condescending, or you're just speaking up because of your emotional issues, something. I've heard all kinds of things. But just to put a positive spin, especially at my current company, I think it's a small company, it's a small team, but I joined that company in January, and I feel like I have made it a point to speak up, but still be nice, because it doesn't take too much to be nice with people and just to be kind with people, but still be firm about your points. And I feel very welcomed. I've had the fortune of having mentors who have listened to me in the last couple of months. I have seen the change in myself where my opinions are more valued. I'm given that place in a conversation where they are listening to me, and at least they value my opinions, whatever, they value my decisions. So I feel like it's a good balance, but I think speaking up is the way to go, because if you're not standing up for yourself, unfortunately, I don't think anybody else will. And I feel like there is a shift as to what others mentioned. It is changing. It's a slow change, but I'm hoping we will get there. It's just, that's the change I've seen in my current job.
Yeah, totally. I agree. I'm a big proponent for standing up for yourself. Not that I always did. I had a sponsor or mentor that also shared feedback with me pretty early in my career that I was coming across like I was pissed off. Is basically what he said. He's like, you're trying to get your point across. So to your point, I wasn't doing it with tact. So I was definitely coming across abrasive because I think I was so defensive. I was already on the defensive that they weren't going to accept my opinion, or someone was going to dispute it, or they were going to ignore me. So I combated that, unfortunately, without being nice, with coming across kind of abruptly and with force. And I was told, like, listen, you have great points. And in a lot of cases, you are the smartest person in the conversation, but you're not being heard because you don't have like the polish around the way you're delivering your message. And so that was tough feedback for me, because I was like, well, I shouldn't have to be like a sweet as pie and smile and toss my head. They're like, no, just like be nice. But I was so defensive, right? So you kind of had a chip on my shoulder, and rightly so, because there is all this societal bias. I was the only woman in the room. So Aurora, were you going to add to that? I think you were going to say something.
I'd like to quote Chimamanda Adichie. This moment is the right moment, maybe. And she says, I'd like to be no longer apologetic for my feminist or my femininity. I want to be respected in all my feminists because I deserve to be. She is a feminist, but I believe it's crucial bringing this behavior on workplace.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. And I think that that's a good point too, Aurora, right? Because like speaking from the place of being so defensive, if we stop like feeling like we have to apologize and be sorry for who we are, then we won't be defensive, right? And so like putting positive spin on it, like coming at it that way, I think, it definitely like kind of tones down the emotions, right? Because that's, we are emotional beings. And so when our emotions run high, our intellect runs low, and then people have a hard time like receiving the information we're putting out there. But I don't know, Kamal, what do you think about all that?
Definitely, I agree, because everybody experience gives some kind of a learning curve for me, or how to handle it or going forward with it. So that there are a few things that I would just like add on. This is diverse is always, they have this preconceived notion that it's all about gender, race, tech. No, there's more than that. I think that understanding itself will break the stereotype and gives us that privilege how to handle situations. I think that every woman, even sometimes in certain scenarios, men also do face is, say, for example, if it is a human resource role, they hire exclusively a woman. I really don't understand. Why is that? Why men are really not good at it? If it is recruiting, they go for men. I really kind of still keep thinking about it. So I think it's more than race, gender, tech. It's more than that. So I think if someone could actually come up with different kinds of diverse factors that you are being facing, I think that would give an eye opener to the rest of the world that, these also are factors that to be considered.
Yeah, we call those the dimensions of diversity, right? Like that's what I was talking. Yeah, exactly. And I think personality type is a dimension of diversity, right? Like, am I a type A person versus a different type of person? Like, am I, all of those things are part of who make you who you are. I love that analogy around HR, because it's so true, right? And I think we see recruiters as men because it's affiliated with a sales role, right? Like a recruiter is essentially like sort of similar to sales. And so we see a lot more men in sales, right? Why? Doesn't mean like I would actually argue that they probably aren't as good for like appealing to and like selling and like being empathetic towards somebody and appealing to them. But yeah, it's interesting. It's really, to me, it is like really based in societal bias. But I've seen it too. I cannot think of someone that's run HR that was not female in my career. Or someone I know. They're all female.
Yeah, and also there's another factor which I've seen. You have a degree, you've been valued more than experience, which I also feel that is also some kind of biasing factor when you're recruiting people. I know degree adds a value, but not depend completely on it, saying it's mandatory to have a degree. These days, people do not have degree who are entering into coding and they're doing awesome jobs. Give them a chance.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would like to add there, though, I feel like that is changing with the startup world, particularly because my previous startup, I actually had the fortune of working with two female colleagues of mine who entered into the tech world by just attending a boot camp. They didn't have an official degree, and I feel like they did so much better than me sometimes. Like it's just the job that they did was amazing. So I feel like that is, I'm not sure how much is changing with big organizations, but with startups, I've seen that change where people who with not that much, like with not an official degree, are still doing great, overcoming great challenges in the tech world, which is why I feel like startups have a much better opportunity because they are at that early stage to build up a diverse team, which is irrespective of the gender, race, or the deep facets of diversity that we are talking about here.
Totally
So,
agree, Divya.
yeah.
I think startup is the one phase which is actually kind of changing that era. You know what? These things really don't matter. You
Yep.
have talent and you have that capability of learning. You have that eagerness to learn and adapt. You're good for this role. Go ahead. Just to give a very small example, I had one person, she's a big social media person, where she said that, you know what, we are hiring. If you are good to work with me, there is no responsibility as such as I want to add. Just ping me or just send me a DM. So that was the kind of job description she had put. So you can see how things are changing up in the startup world rather than this usual job descriptions and so many requirements. Yeah.
It's true.
I believe that our generation is more thoughtful about the generation of workforces. Maybe because we are more stimulated also by all information coming from social media. And so I believe that diversity, awareness about diversity is increasing right now. And I am confident that the future generation, the new generation will bring a new state of mind. And so bringing this behavior and this conversation in workplace is a great step forward.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And like what I always say is like, just start to think differently and you'll act differently, right? Like if we all recognize this and we just start to think about it more, like to bring it more to the forefront, then we will all start acting differently too. But all great points. I think we're ready to wrap up. Does anybody have any last parting remarks that they want to share for those that are listening on or with each other?
I would just say it takes one person to start the conversation and to whatever, pay it forward. So if anybody, whoever is listening, if anybody feels that you need to wait for somebody else to have that conversation, just be that person. Start that conversation, even with a colleague. Start small, but it will lead to fruitful future, I would say, or opportunities. But yeah,
that's great.
And I'd like to say to everyone if you don't believe in yourself, start doing that, because I'm starting doing that now, and it feels great because you begin to do things that you thought you weren't capable of. So do it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Definitely.
I think I just wanted to just say one thing is inspire change. I think that makes a lot of difference. I think if everybody kind of at least think about it, not even follow, just think about it, I think it's going to work wonders. It's going to change the society.
I agree. All right. I want to just show, I think we're all done. This was awesome. I loved talking to all you guys today. I loved the conversation. I could talk about this forever. There's so much more to dig into. So if you want to, anyone that's watching, if you want to connect with me or any of the participants here, I'm sure you can reach out to them directly on LinkedIn or other avenues. Also, if you want to share your insights with us at Diversified Thinking, we love these types of conversations. We're actually building up. What we want to do is a case study we can share back with people to talk about your insights around these exact topics that we talked about today, because we want to build ways to change the world, right? So we want to build ways to make this better for everybody. So feel free to take a snap of this, connect with me, join our community for Diversified Thinking. And we're going to have these insight interviews where we're talking to people about their own experiences at different levels of different types of organizations, startup and otherwise. So loved being here. Thank you so much for inviting us, and I will hand it back to the organizers.